Accessing.
When TV and radio collide.
Love it.
Wow. This is what you get. You're listening to JJ and Alex, presented by G2G Bars.
Don't touch that dial.
On 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Welcome back. It's another edition of JJ and Alex, 97.5 EKSL Sports Zone. Alex Curie, Jeremiah Jensen joining us right now on the program. This is an interesting one. I did not picture myself having an interview this week with somebody from Memphis talking Memphis Athletics, and yet here we are. Tim Buckley, he writes for the Daily Memphian and covers the Memphis Tigers Athletics. And so, Tim, thanks for being with us, man.
And I did not expect to be talking to anybody in Salt Lake, where I spent, I think it was 11 of the best years of my life.
Oh, so. Really? Look at you. See,
yeah.
It all comes full circle, Tim. So here we are.
Covered the Jazz for the Deseret News for more than a decade.
Tim, now the name rings. Now the name rings, and it makes sense now. I was like, this sounds very familiar. Oh, very good.
Very good.
Well, we'll ask you about the Jazz prospects later. I'm sure it's equally it's probably easy to forget those right now, considering how things are. But yeah, let's jump in a little bit, Tim, to what's happened over the past 24, 36 hours. Number one, this is a crazy deal because it's just something we've never seen before. What's the reaction been like by, I guess, Tiger faithful and how this thing went down? And what was the actual deal that was put together as far as you know?
Well, I think the reaction was kind of a collective groan, like, again, they don't want us from the Memphis faithful because this is not the first bid that the Tigers obviously have made to get into the Big 12. And they've been shunned before when, Houston made it out of the American Athletic Conference, or the American Conference, as they now prefer to be called. And Cincinnati made it out, and Central Florida made it out. And Memphis just kept getting rebuffed. And they ended up putting together this time what amounts to, in the mind, I think, the minds, plural of many here, a desperation bid. And the numbers, there's different numbers that have been thrown around, more than $200 million, $250 million-ish in various forms and whatnot. But a bundle of money, foregoing TV income for 5 years, which obviously is a huge chunk of change.
Right. And
basically if you want to dump me as your girlfriend, you're free to go ahead and do so clause, which is, I think, viewed by at least some here as really weird. But you have to commend Memphis's athletic administration and Ed Scott, well, he's at the end of his first year now, early into his second, athletic director, for, thinking of anything and everything it can to make a plea and try to get them where they desperately want to be, which is partly the Big 12, primarily to a power conference. They're not picky, and also primarily out of the American Conference.
So when this thing went down and like you said, there's this idea, and they put out the statement today that said, hey, we're going to come out stronger from this thing, which is like, the typical, you say the same thing when you do break up with somebody, right? I mean, that's, or somebody rejects you on a date. So when this went down and there's 200 or 250 million, I've seen two different numbers there. How exactly was that going to work? Was that like hey, we can bring you this on an annual basis in sponsorships? Obviously, people have to get creative when they try to get to a number. And listen, Brett Yormark, the commissioner of the Big 12, even though he's not the only guy to convince, he's a money guy. And so obviously making that kind of a pitch, it was unprecedented in the sense that we don't see people trying to buy their way into a power conference.
Well, to be frank with you, in the joyous part of my life that involves no longer being a beat writer and more being a columnist and a takeout guy and whatnot, I don't have to deal with minutia anymore, which is a very beautiful thing. Compounding that with the fact that I was actually driving home from Nashville after covering a Tigers on tour event in the Nashville area over the weekend. I wasn't the one, frankly, doing all the reporting on the details of it, but, to me, 200 million, 250 million is 250 million, whether it's, you pull it out from your couch cushions or from underneath your mattress. It's a big sum of money.
Yep.
So how specifically it works, people way smarter than me figure that out.
when you kind of see how this thing goes down, obviously the basketball piece and Penny Hardaway and his program, that's a big basketball program. How much of that were they kind of leaning on that to maybe look in that direction? And then what are the things that make it to where it's not a good fit market-wise for the Big 12?
Well, in the minds of many, Memphis is a basketball school first and foremost. 72-73 team went to the Final Four and lost in the championship game to John Wooden and Bill Walton and that whole crew. Their 84-85 team made it to the Final Four. The William Bedford, Andre Turner-led team with Keith Lee on it, and long basketball history here. And that's what they are. And, yes, that's a big part of what they pitch as their appeal. I mean, they'd love being in a conference, playing regularly with Kansas and, some other powerful basketball programs that the American just doesn't have to offer. So, yeah, that's a big part of it. What doesn't work for Memphis, look, you'd have to, lay down on a couch and give the people of Memphis about 3 years to get it all off their chests as to why they're not loved.
Right.
But, some perceive that it has to do with crime factors, socioeconomic factors that Memphis deals with. Some, it has to do with the not as much corporate support, although they have pretty darn good corporate support, led by, among others, FedEx and AutoZone. But that's a piece of the puzzle. It's a good-sized market, but it's not a huge market. TV market share, they're in the, give or take high 40s, low 50s range. So not all that different from some of the teams that are in the league. They don't understand a lot of why they're not there. Look, they've got, and granted, it's coming out of a group of 5 conference, but they've got 11 straight bowl bids. They've got a pretty good NCAA tournament history as far as basketball goes. They play in an NBA arena. They have a big-name basketball coach. They have a football coach who's heading into his 6th season, so there's some stability there. They beat West Virginia in their last bowl game, so, granted it's bowl games and you're playing some third stringers and whatnot, but they've shown capable of playing against the big boys. They played in the Liberty Bowl not long ago and they beat Iowa State. So, again, the history there against power conference teams. People here are confused as to why the love's not there.
Tim Buckley, Daily Memphian, joining us here on JJ and Alex as we try to break down what this thing looks like. Now what's the next move? Is it just kind of sit and kind of take what the recent deal gave you? Obviously, there's nothing else you can do besides from that if you're Memphis. But what's their next move? Is there another possibility of looking around and trying to figure a way to get out into an ACC situation? Do they monitor that when you watch other teams who want to leave the ACC and you go, hey, we're ready to join that conference, how aggressive will the athletic director and the president of the university get?
Oh, I think they'll get very aggressive. The athletic director, and I don't have the exact number at my fingertips, but he's got a nice bonus clause if they get into a power conference, so he's not going to sit on his hands. Some people immediately said, well, why not take that same lousy offer and present it to the ACC and see if they'll bite? And they have been in discussions with the ACC before, although never really managed to gain any traction with that. But their AD came directly to Memphis from Virginia, so he's got some ties back there where he was an associate AD. The Pac-12 made a bid, or the new look Pac-12, I should say, made a bid to take them roughly around this time last year, maybe a little later in the year in 2024. And Memphis rebuff that pretty much out of hand because of the uncertainty of their TV deal at the time and not knowing what that whole thing was going to look like. Their name occasionally pops up again in relation to the Pac-12. Is there the possibility that they go to the Pac-12 as a football-only member, place their basketball team in a higher profile basketball-centric conference, and then do something that makes geographic sense, which not many conferences these days do, for their Olympic sports or non-revenue sports or minor sports or not football, basketball sports, whatever you want to call them. Or do they just sit and wait for, the next crazy carousel spin? And obviously things aren't going to get done, and there's probably going to be another breakaway at some point. Their best bet is to position themselves, whether it's continuing to be one of the top group of 5 programs or whether it's getting into a power conference like the Big 12, to be there for what probably will not be the highest echelon group in separation, whether, that's the SEC and the Big Ten schools and some combination of a few others. But they want to be in that middle tier. They want to be not in the left out tier.
Right.
And, they're doing everything they can to position themselves. But as we all know, it takes 2 to tango.
Tim Buckley, Daily Memphian, is where you can see his byline. We appreciate you taking some extra time here as we try to figure out. We looked at the money part, and we just assumed that maybe the Big 12 would take a roll of the dice, at least a look at it. But no cigar so far for the folks at Memphis. But we're looking forward to this, how the rest of this thing plays out, how the G5 future plays out for every school who are in these conferences who are trying to just survive at some point in such a crazy landscape of college athletics. Tim, thanks for joining us today, man. We appreciate it.
You got it.
All right, Tim Buckley, former Deseret News and Jazz beat writer. Can you believe that? That's pretty wild. That's a good connection. All right, we'll take the break here. More to go. 97.5 VKSL Sports Zone.